Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be giving a brief introduction to the Git application. As part of this video, we'll be working with the Git application to do some basic folder navigation, to initialize Git repository, and then we'll explore what that initialized repository looks like. For this exercise, I'm going to be working within a folder called First Repo. So I'm going to go ahead and create that new folder on my desktop. Now that I've created my first repo folder, I can go within that folder and open up the Git Bash application, as it's called. An important thing to note is that there are a couple different ways to open up the Git application. The easiest way to open up the Git Bash is to simply open up the folder that you want to work within, right-click, and select the Git Bash Here option within your context menu. This option may or may not show up based on how you installed the Git application, but if you're not seeing it here and if you'd like to use this option, certainly reach out and we'll get that set up. So I'm going to go ahead and select Git Bash Here, and this opens up a console application, which the Git Bash is. This Git Bash is a console application. For those of you who have worked with a console in the past, this will look pretty familiar, whether you've worked with a command prompt in Windows or if you've used the terminal in a Linux-based system. This works in a very similar way. One thing that you might notice that's a little bit different if you're opening this up on your machine is that I've modified the settings here to make the font larger and make the application larger. Those settings can be accessed by right-clicking on the header and selecting Options. Within here, you're able to specify the various settings. So for example, I can select Window, and I can specify my default column size and the number of rows. There are a lot of options in here. The one that I changed was under text, so I specified my font to be 24 point. I believe by default that's 9 point. Alright, so now that we're within our Git Bash application, there are a few things that I want to call out before we do anything. So first off, it shows my username logged into this machine, and then it shows my machine name. Last important thing to note here is the path. So it uses a Linux style path. So rather than having a backslash, it'll show forward slashes here. But you'll see that currently the Git Bash, the application that we're in, is pointing to the C users Gritzmacher R desktop first repo folder. And this is pointing to this location because I initialized the Git Bash from within that folder. So I right-clicked in that folder and selected Git Bash Here. And that automatically opened up the Git Bash and pointed it to that folder. So now that we're within the Git Bash, we're going to perform some basic folder navigation tasks. So one of them is if I want to navigate up a level, so if I want to navigate from out of my first repo folder and up to the desktop folder, I can simply use the cd command. CD stands for change directory, so I can do CD space and then followed by 2 decimals, 2 periods, ... And if I go ahead and execute that command, you can see that this folder that I'm currently pointed to has gone up a level to the desktop, so that means I'm now working out of the desktop. So I can do CD ... as many times as I would like to navigate further and further up the tree. If I want to navigate back into my first repo folder, I can simply say CD, and then I can start typing the directory that I want to navigate into. And a real handy trick is using the tab key. So within the Git Bash, if we're typing the name of a file or the name of a folder, we can start typing that folder name and then hit the tab key, and it will automatically complete the name of that file or folder we're trying to access. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here, and you can see now that I'm back within my desktop first repo folder. So I'm back where we started. So those are some basic navigation tasks within the Git Bash. Another very common one is the ls command. So lowercase l, lowercase s. What this does is this lists the contents of the directory that we're currently pointing to. So in this scenario, I'm pointing to the first repo folder. So if I execute my ls command, you can see that I get no results. Nothing came back because this folder is new, I just created it, and there's nothing in it. However, if I were to create a text file in here, for example, I'll just create a new text document. And if I go back to my Git bash, I can execute again the ls command and enter. And you can see that it's listed now that the new text document file exists within that folder. So the cd, the ls, and utilizing the tab key are very important things to keep in mind as you're working throughout the Git bash. The last tip that I have for you as far as using the Git bash at this point is using the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard. So you can use the up and down arrows to cycle through the list of previous commands that have been executed. So for example, I hit the up arrow and it's automatically completed the ls command because that was a previous command that I executed. I can hit up again and it takes me back to my cd first repo. And again, I can cycle through those going up and down on my keyboard. So again, just another handy trick to keep in mind. All right, the last thing that I want to show you is how to initialize a Git repository. So I'm going to go back to my folder and I'm going to clear out my new text document that I created. And within the Git bash now we're going to execute our first Git command. And that first Git command that we're going to be doing is called Git init. So init, of course, being short for initialize. So here I'm going to execute the command Git init. This Git initialize command initializes a Git repository in the folder that we're currently pointed to, which in this case is this first repo folder on my desktop. So we're going to initialize a new Git repository in that folder. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off that command. And it tells us, and by the way, the Git bash gives back very useful feedback, so make sure to read what gets dumped after a command is executed. Here it shows that it initialized an empty Git repository in C users gritsmacher r desktop first repo and then .git.git. One important thing to note as well here is that it shows a parentheses master. So this lets us know that we are currently looking at a folder that has a Git repository in it. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. You can see by performing the git init command that we now have a .git folder here. An important thing to note at this point is that this .git folder may not show up for you on your computer if you are not showing hidden files and folders. So to change that setting, you can go through, if you're on Windows 7 or a similar operating system, you can go to Tools, Folder Options, and under View, there is a Show Hidden Files, Folders, and Drives. You want to make sure that that's selected in order for this hidden .git folder to show up. Essentially, this .git folder is where it's going to hold all of the history and the files themselves as you're working on files within a repository. But that is how you initialize your first Git repository. Thanks for watching.